Well, I've done a few of these type videos, and I've been a little harsh on women in some of them, but I'm just being honest about what my opinion of women are and the reasons why I no longer seek out a relationship. But I haven't done a video pointing out the issues with the modern man, today's man. So we're going to do that today. And the difference is, I'm probably not going to have a bunch of men typing in being offended. We're just not wired that way. They're going to say, hey man, that's exactly how I feel. But tomorrow, we're going to do a more in-depth video on, well, my opinion, the modern man's opinion, some of the things they see wrong with women, which contribute to relationship problems or divorce. Let's get into it. Here I go again with these. Well, you guys watch these things. If you watch the cooler videos, well, then I wouldn't have to make these kinds. But here we go. Men have always been wired a certain way, and that hasn't changed. And what we've had to do is adapt to modern culture. And we're still wired the way we've always been since creation. We were wired to be the caregivers. We were wired to be the breadwinners, to be the protectors, to be the fathers. And a lot of those things have been stripped away from men. And you're trying to think about this and go, well, what do you mean? What's been stripped away? Well, let's take them one at a time here. If you are a divorced man or even a single man, and you're seeking a relationship, and you find a certain lady that you wait on, well, chances are pretty good it ain't her first relationship. She's been in several before that. And chances are really good that there will be a child, if not 2 or 3 or 4. At that point, you have to make the decision, is this something I'm willing to take on? You have to take a lot of things into consideration. If this relationship blossoms, am I going to be able to support them? Because the deadbeat daddy, but he ain't sending no support. You also have to take into consideration, is she going to pay any attention to me? She's going to be busy with 4 children that are not mine. And I will have limitations on how I can discipline them. I will have limitations on how much time I can spend with them. And I'm going to have to be careful around these children, because I don't know these children and they don't know me. And it's always a scary situation when you enter a relationship with existing children. And 9 times out of 10, it is the women that have custody of these children. Once in a blue moon, somebody might go into a relationship where the man also has children. That creates a whole new scenario. Well, you got 2 sets of kids. Are they going to get along if this works out? So you have a lot to consider. So men are more likely to walk away from that type of scenario because, man, they just don't want to have to deal with it. But the problem today is it's almost every date that you're going to go on. You're not going to find, unless you're 19 years old, you're not going to find that 18-year-old that's never been in a relationship. You're not going to find that person. You're going to find used goods, and you are used goods yourself. And used goods always come with questions. The other person wants to know, who are you with? That's a valid question. Who are you with? How long are you with them? How many kids do you have with that person? All these questions are going to come up. And if you are untruthful in the beginning, well, you're just going to have to cover that up all the way along, and eventually you're going to get caught. So men like to stay away from that, but it's getting to the point where they can't. If they want to be in a relationship, they're going to have to take something like that on. Now, if you're walking into an established household, You're having a relationship with somebody that has an established household. They are the breadwinner. They are the children's discipliner, if that's a word, discipliner. You're going to have to adjust to that. And a lot of men are not wired to accept the fact that they're not the only breadwinner, they're not the only protector. And a lot of times, if you enter into a relationship with a woman that already has children, you take a back seat to those children, which you should. And you may not like that, especially in the new phase of a relationship. You want the attention. You want all the little, little treats and things that women do for men and men do for women, but you're not getting them because as soon as you reach over to give her a little smooch, little Junior comes out of the room. Mom! Can we have a grilled cheese sandwich? Yep, been through that. You better get used to it. Can they sleep with you tonight? Those kind of things. A mother is always going to take her children first. And if she doesn't, well, she's on crack or something. And you don't want somebody that's on crack. Another problem men have today is we are too selfish. Very selfish. We like to have our toys and go out and play with the boys on the weekend. Drink a few beers. Women don't and never have like that. So you work all week. They want you to be home with them, which, you should, but you have to give each other that time where you can go off and be with your friends and do what you want. And a lot of women ain't going to allow that. So men resent that immediately. They start resenting that. That is the point where they need to put a stop to the relationship before it even begins. Because obviously you want to enjoy the things that you're used to doing, but yet you're seeking a relationship that you're going to have to give up some things. So you have to be prepared for that. And if you're not, it's not the right time for you. Another problem is, by the time, say you're in your mid-40s, women, especially if they have a lot of kids, and they're feeding these kids all this garbage that we feed kids today, macaroni and cheese, well, they're nibbling on that too. Yes, women tend to not look as good as they used to. Sorry, we'll keep that for tomorrow's video, but I've already talked about that. That should be no secret to anybody watching that everybody, including men and women and children, are all obese now. And even if that's not a factor, that could be a major player in the future. If I'm a man going into a relationship and they have several children and this woman is not taking care of herself, well, the first thing that's going to enter my mind is, man, if we get into a long-term relationship and she's not healthy, I'm going to be taking care of her like a doctor all the time. And she may stick me with these kids. That sounds rough, doesn't it? But that's something to consider. If you're entering a relationship with somebody that has existing children, the end game for the woman is that they want you to be a father. They may not necessarily want you to be the father, but they want you to be a father figure. They want you to be there. They want you to help out. So you're taking on a full-time job if there are children involved. And also, not just children, you're probably going to have pets in the home. But it's been my experience, if you're in a relationship with somebody that's got children, well, they got sports, they do. They got to be run. You got to run them here, you got to run them there. You're going to be busy. You're going to be very busy. So if you're not committed, if a man is not committed to do all these things, then he needs to get out before it starts. And men, as I said, are still wired the way we've always been. Think of Little House on the Prairie. You got Paul, right? Okay, Paul's the breadwinner. Paul couldn't get any work. Paul hit the road. sent the money back home, and, you know, women have taken on different roles today. Starting in the 50s and 60s, women started going to work. Women have cried for equal pay. And it's taken something away from the man that is ingrained in us. It's nothing we're taught anymore, because we're not taught this anymore, because people my age, you know, I'm probably the last generation of the family where the man was the sole breadwinner. And the woman, you know, my mother stayed home, took care of us kids. She was always a homemaker. But those days are gone now. Usually both parents work, and it's kind of counterproductive, because if the children are young, you have to pay for daycare, and so one of them's working for a much smaller wage, because they're dishing a lot of that out to daycare. But they have to do it in order to make ends meet. You just can't live on one income anymore. And that stresses men out a lot. Entering into a mortgage with somebody, and you know the divorce rates are high now. How is this going to end? And if it does end, she's going to get the house, and I'm still going to be paying the mortgage, and I'm still going to have to go look for a place to live and pay for that. So men are very leery of these kind of things today. Now, we all enter into a relationship when we're younger, thinking, yes, this is the person we're going to have children. So when you do these things, you're thinking, well, this is my lifelong partner. And if you look at statistics, you can see that never works out anymore. About at least 50% of marriages end in the first 5 years. Well, I don't know if 50% end, but 50% of marriages end. Then there's the children. I couldn't tell you. I don't know what it's like. I haven't experienced what it's like to have parents that are divorced, because mine are still married. They're still alive. I cannot imagine how that would be. So you get resentment. A man is going to get resentment from those children, especially if the father was a good father and the parents just couldn't get along and they love their father. That's going to be harder for the new guy that comes in. They're going to resent that. Then you also have the factor that you got to deal with the ex. And guys do not like to deal with exes. We don't want no part of that. It's always better when they're out of the picture. But that's just something you're going to have to deal with that sucks. And it's vice versa. You know, the women might have to deal with the man's ex. And usually for them, that's a nightmare, because you know how women are. You know, they're at each other's throats. And I'll tell you, let me get a drink of coffee, because it's getting deep. We all know what the problems are today. We all know. It's not, you don't need to write a book on it. It's just nobody can get along. And men are just afraid to commit. Women are afraid to commit. But they still want company of the opposite sex, so they start seeing each other. And then before you know it, they're living together. And here we are. And then the whole set of problems that was present in the first relationships that they'd had with someone else, well, they'll start coming out. It's usually never one person's fault. It's just, there's no compromise anymore in any relationships. Nobody wants to compromise. Nobody wants to give a little. And the ones that do, the men that I call them the yes ma'am men, they're miserable. They're not happy. They're the guys that you're at work with and say, come on, Larry, let's go have a beer after work. No, I'll have to ask my wife, or I'll be in trouble if I do that. A man doesn't like to live in a situation where he's treated as a child again. We got through childhood. We want freedoms to be able to do what we want within reason. Now, if Larry is going to go out with the boys and stay gone for 3 days on a drunken stupor, she's got every right to be mad, and he's got every right to be in trouble. But just to stop and have one beer, and I know of a case, this this is something. This is the worst case I've ever seen, but I worked with a guy, and it was here in town when I worked at the pawn shop. But his wife, while he was at work, would pull up in the truck and just watch him and controlled every aspect of everything he did. And if he did something wrong, she would scream at him and chastise him right there, and would just constantly had to know what this man was doing. And he was afraid of her. He was physically, and she's a begging too. She was a begging, I'd be afraid of her too. But who wants to live like that? A man does not want to live in fear of his wife. And today, with all the chemicals in the food and chemicals in the water and chemicals in the air, you don't know what's in somebody's head anymore, what they're capable of. Crazy things happen. And also, guys have a big fear of failing if they enter into a relationship. Are they going to be, maybe their job's not good enough, they don't make much. Maybe that's the whole issue. They just don't earn very much, and so they don't think they're worth, they don't have anything to bring to the table. So there's a lot of mental, it's more mental than anything else. It doesn't matter if you're overweight or whatever, it's more mentally an issue. And a lot of women also will bring up, and this is one thing men hate. Ladies, listen to this. We don't want to hear a dang thing about my ex did this or my ex did that. We don't want to hear about it. We understand if you have children that you have to have contact with this man. But excessive contact, don't like that either. You don't need to be texting the dude every day. If that's the case, move back in with him. You're not done, you know. A lot of people separate and they still remain friends. I got a lot of lady friends that I used to date that we're not involved anymore, but we talk pretty regular. You become basically friends. I don't have to deal with them usually in my real life, but you know, an email, a text, about that. And then quickly after, you know, you meet somebody, you know how that fades down, and then you just you go into regular life. You're not doing the kissy huggy thing anymore. And guys are always constantly trying to buy flowers and try to spruce things up, and it just doesn't work because the woman is not interested in having that phase of the relationship over again. And it makes the man feel like, well, she's got me now, you know. And that is something a man feels all the time. Once that fades down, which at my age I would be grateful for that fading down. But he feels like he's screwing up, he's done something wrong, she's not attracted to him anymore. I don't know. I don't like doing these stupid videos like this, but you guys watch them. So I will do a video tomorrow on some of the issues I see with women, and I will be nice this time. I think the first one I did was why I'm single, but we both have mental issues. We both have physical issues. Men and women both have a lot of work to do, and you know, let's be honest, I don't see it getting any better. There's not going to be a magic solution that all of a sudden men and women get along, because honestly, before women's rights, back in the 1800s and all the time before, women weren't happy. They just weren't happy because they didn't have much say in anything. And some situations were worse than others, but were they truly happy? I don't think a man or a woman is ever going to be truly happy. Now, I will see in the comments, we've been married 50 years, we're beautifully happy. Well, you are the minority. And I do know that happens. My parents are still together. Hey, they've had their problems, okay? If you're in a relationship 50, 60 years, they've been married 60 years, you're going to have arguments. You're going to have disagreements. You're going to agree to disagree. And that's, I guess, one of the things I never learned. And you would think I would have learned those traits from my father and my mother, but I didn't. But the problem is, I might have learned those things and learned how to deal with that. But the person that I'm with has not learned those things. And when I look back, most of the relationships I had broken homes. Their parents were divorced. So maybe they didn't know how to deal with it. So either way, when a relationship ends, it's not one person's fault. It's both your faults. Thanks for watching. Happy trails.